Imagine reaching 101 years of age and looking back on an entire century of change. You would have watched the world move from home gardens to supermarkets, from family recipes to factory-made convenience foods, and from simple kitchens to endless shelves filled with products promising better health. That is where this story begins. It is not presented as a medical guarantee or a secret formula for living longer. Instead, it is a reflection on how everyday habits shaped generations that learned to survive with very little while still building strong families and resilient communities. The speaker begins by asking a simple but powerful question. What if the foods that helped ordinary people through some of the hardest years in history still have something valuable to teach us today? Having lived through the Great Depression and the challenges of wartime, she remembers a time when every ingredient mattered, every meal had a purpose, and wasting food was simply not an option. Those experiences shaped a different way of thinking about nourishment, gratitude, and daily life. She also invites us to look more carefully at modern food culture. Many products are marketed as the answer to better health or greater happiness, yet the healthiest habits are often the simplest ones. Rather than chasing every new trend, this journey explores 5 humble meals that supported families through difficult times. More importantly, each meal represents resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet wisdom of making the most of what you have. By the end of this video, you may discover that the greatest lesson is not only about food, but about living with intention, appreciating simplicity, and finding lasting value in everyday choices. With that perspective in mind, let us begin with the first meal, one that may sound almost too simple to deserve attention. Warm bread and milk was never considered a luxury. It was a practical supper that quietly carried countless families through difficult seasons when every penny mattered. There were no fancy ingredients, no colorful packaging, and no promises of miracle health benefits. There was only the determination to make enough from what was already in the kitchen. A slice of day-old bread was torn into a bowl and covered with gently warmed whole milk. On fortunate days, a small sprinkle of sugar added a touch of sweetness. But even without it, the meal served its purpose. The softened bread became filling, comforting, and satisfying after a long day of work. For many parents, the greatest reward was not the flavor itself, but seeing their children go to bed with full stomachs and hopeful hearts, despite uncertain times. Looking back, the true value of this meal was never measured by nutrition labels or fashionable trends. It represented creativity, gratitude, and the belief that simple food prepared with care could still bring comfort to an entire family. It reminds us that a meaningful meal does not always need to be expensive or complicated. Sometimes the greatest gift is simply gathering around the table and appreciating what is available. That lesson remains just as meaningful today. While modern grocery stores offer endless choices, satisfaction often comes from simplicity rather than abundance. Bread and warm milk became more than a meal. It became a symbol of resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet confidence that difficult days could be faced one simple supper at a time. As we move beyond that humble bowl of bread and warm milk, another lesson begins to emerge. Survival was not only about having enough food, it was about learning how to respect every ingredient that came into the home. Nothing was considered too ordinary to become part of a nourishing meal, and very little was allowed to go to waste. A head of lettuce that had started to lose its crispness was not thrown into the trash. Instead, it became the foundation of a warm family supper. Fresh leaves were placed into a large bowl, while a simple dressing was prepared from saved bacon drippings, a splash of vinegar, and a small amount of seasoning. The hot dressing softened the lettuce instantly, creating a dish that was rich in flavor and deeply satisfying despite its modest ingredients. What some people might overlook today became something worth gathering around the table to enjoy. The same spirit appeared in another traditional favorite, hamburger gravy served over mashed potatoes. A small amount of ground beef, onions, flour, milk, and inexpensive potatoes stretched into a meal capable of feeding an entire family. Every spoonful reflected careful planning rather than abundance. The goal was never extravagance. It was making the most of what was available while ensuring that no one left the table hungry. These meals remind us that true resourcefulness is a skill that reaches far beyond cooking. Previous generations understood that gratitude often begins by valuing what is already within reach. Instead of constantly searching for something newer or better, they built strong families through creativity, cooperation, and practical wisdom. In many ways, those simple farm kitchens were teaching lessons about resilience that remain just as meaningful in everyday life today. As those family kitchens continued to teach lessons in resourcefulness, the next recipes carried that philosophy even further. They were not created to impress guests or follow culinary trends. They were born from necessity, patience, and a deep respect for every ingredient that found its way onto the table. In those days, wasting food was not simply discouraged. It was something most families could not afford to do. One memorable example is scrapple, a traditional breakfast that transformed cuts of pork, often overlooked today, into a hearty meal. Combined with cornmeal, simple seasonings, and careful preparation, those humble ingredients became food that sustained farmers, factory workers, and families through long, demanding days. The recipe reflected an important belief that every useful resource deserved appreciation rather than rejection. Another powerful example was navy bean soup prepared with a leftover ham bone. What appeared to have little value still contained flavor that slowly emerged during hours of gentle cooking with dried beans, onions, and vegetables. As the soup simmered, simple ingredients blended together into a rich and comforting meal that could feed a household for more than one day. The process required patience instead of expensive ingredients, proving that time and care often created the greatest value. These forgotten recipes tell a much larger story than cooking alone. They remind us that previous generations measured wealth differently. True abundance was not defined by having more than everyone else. It was measured by the ability to provide for loved ones with wisdom, creativity, and gratitude. Even today, these traditions encourage us to look beyond convenience and remember that some of life's most meaningful lessons are found in making the most of what we already have. After reflecting on these humble meals, the story takes an unexpected turn. Up to this point, every recipe has shown how ordinary families stretched simple ingredients into nourishing dinners. But now the speaker reveals that the food itself was never the entire lesson. The recipes were only the beginning. The deeper message is about the kind of hunger that cannot be satisfied by anything served on a plate. In earlier generations, many families faced real shortages. They worried about having enough bread, enough milk, or enough beans to carry them through another week. Today, many people have access to more food than ever before, yet countless individuals still feel restless, dissatisfied, or as though something important is missing. The article invites us to consider that this emptiness may have less to do with the stomach and more to do with the heart and mind. Instead of suggesting that another product or another purchase will solve that feeling, the speaker points toward values that cannot be bought. Gratitude, purpose, meaningful relationships, and quiet contentment become a different kind of nourishment. These qualities helped earlier generations face uncertainty with resilience, even when material comforts were limited. This shift changes the entire conversation. What first appeared to be a collection of old family recipes becomes a reflection on how we choose to live. The meals remind us that survival has always involved more than physical strength. It also depends on emotional resilience, appreciation for simple blessings, and the ability to find peace without constantly searching for more. Perhaps the greatest lesson passed down through these kitchens is that a rich life is not measured by everything we own, but by the gratitude we bring to what we already have. Once the conversation moves beyond physical hunger, the speaker turns to another challenge that shapes modern life every single day. Unlike previous generations that worried about finding enough food, many people today are surrounded by endless choices and constant advertising. Every screen, every advertisement, and every social media feed seems to promise that happiness is only one purchase away. Yet the article gently asks an important question. If buying more always created fulfillment, why do so many people still feel as though something is missing? The speaker reflects on how modern marketing often appeals to emotion rather than necessity. Products are frequently presented as symbols of success, beauty, youth, or importance instead of simply serving a practical purpose. Luxury dining experiences, fashionable wellness trends, and viral products may attract attention, but they do not automatically create a more meaningful life. The message is not that these things are always wrong. Instead, it encourages viewers to pause and ask whether a purchase truly meets a real need or simply responds to a feeling created by clever advertising. This perspective also reminds us to trust our own judgment. Earlier generations often relied on practical experience, careful spending, and making thoughtful choices because resources were limited. That same habit of intentional decision-making still has value today. Ultimately, the article encourages a shift in mindset rather than fear of modern products. Real confidence cannot be packaged, and lasting contentment cannot be purchased. It grows through gratitude, wise choices, and meaningful relationships. When we become more intentional about what we allow to influence our decisions, we begin to discover that some of the richest moments in life require very little money at all, only clarity, purpose, and appreciation for what truly matters. Truly lasting freedom begins long before we decide what to buy. It begins with learning what deserves our attention. That is why the conversation now moves beyond the shopping cart and into the mind itself. The speaker argues that the greatest form of simplicity is not owning fewer possessions, but allowing fewer outside voices to control the way we think. Every day we are surrounded by advertisements, recommendations, trends, and carefully edited images that encourage us to believe we are always missing something. Over time, that constant pressure can make ordinary life seem less valuable than it really is. Instead of chasing every new promise, the article encourages viewers to pause and ask a simple question. Does this purchase truly improve my life, or am I responding to a feeling someone else created? That small habit of reflection becomes the foundation of mental independence. A glass of clean water can be enough when you are thirsty. Comfortable clothes can serve their purpose without carrying a famous logo. A quiet dinner shared with family may leave a deeper memory than an expensive experience designed mainly for photographs. The speaker also reminds viewers that comparison often steals appreciation. Social media usually presents carefully selected moments rather than everyday reality. Measuring your own life against those highlights can create unnecessary dissatisfaction. Choosing gratitude instead of constant comparison helps protect emotional well-being and reduces the desire to seek happiness through endless consumption. Ultimately, the article suggests that the richest life is not always the one filled with the most possessions. It is the one filled with peace, meaningful relationships, thoughtful decisions, and confidence in having enough. When people learn to protect their attention as carefully as they protect their savings, they become far less influenced by passing trends. That quiet confidence creates a kind of freedom that no advertisement can sell and no market can take away. Once we begin protecting our attention and learning to appreciate enough, another important truth naturally comes into focus. Real wealth is measured less by what we own and more by the people with whom we share our lives. The speaker invites viewers to reconsider the meaning of success by looking beyond impressive possessions, expensive vacations, or carefully curated online images. While these things may appear attractive, they rarely replace the comfort of genuine human connection or the peace that comes from feeling at home with the people you love. To illustrate this idea, the article returns to the image of a simple homemade meal. A modest bowl of bean soup shared around a family table becomes a symbol of togetherness rather than scarcity. The value of the meal comes not from its price, but from the conversations, laughter, memories, and support that surround it. In contrast, an elaborate dinner enjoyed only for appearances may create a photograph worth sharing, yet leave little lasting satisfaction once the moment has passed. The speaker also encourages viewers to spend their most limited resource wisely. Time cannot be saved for another day, making each conversation, shared meal, and quiet afternoon with loved ones far more valuable than another hour spent comparing ourselves with strangers online. Choosing presence over distraction allows relationships to grow stronger and everyday experiences to become more meaningful. In the end, gratitude becomes more than simply saying thank you. It becomes a daily way of seeing the world. By appreciating the people already beside us, the food already on the table, and the life we are already living, we often discover that fulfillment has been much closer than we imagined. The greatest abundance is not found in endless possessions, but in meaningful relationships, peaceful moments, and a heart that recognizes the value of ordinary life. As the message reaches its final reflections, the focus naturally shifts from food, possessions, and relationships to the one resource that quietly shapes every part of life. Time is the one thing every person receives in equal measure each day, yet it is also the one thing that can never be recovered once it has passed. Throughout history, philosophers, writers, and spiritual leaders have expressed this truth in different ways, but they all arrive at the same conclusion. A meaningful life is built not by how much we own, but by how wisely we use the hours we have been given. The speaker encourages viewers to stop waiting for the perfect moment to begin living differently. Too often, people postpone important conversations, healthy habits, family visits, or personal dreams because they believe there will always be another opportunity. While planning for the future has value, the article gently reminds us that today is the only moment we can truly shape through our choices and actions. This perspective also brings the earlier lessons together in a practical way. Preparing a simple meal, sharing time with loved ones, stepping away from unnecessary distractions, and appreciating ordinary moments are not small actions when repeated over many years. They become the foundation of a life filled with purpose and lasting memories. Rather than creating anxiety about the passing of time, the article offers a hopeful invitation. Every new morning provides another chance to choose gratitude over comparison, connection over isolation, and intention over habit. Meaningful change rarely happens through one dramatic event. It grows through countless ordinary decisions made day after day. When we begin treating time as our greatest treasure, we naturally become more careful about where we invest our attention, our energy, and our hearts, creating a life that feels richer with every passing year. As we come to the end of this journey, it becomes clear that these 5 traditional meals were never presented as secret formulas for a long life. They are reminders of something much deeper. They represent a way of thinking that values gratitude over excess, wisdom over convenience, and purpose over endless consumption. While simple home-cooked meals can certainly be part of a balanced lifestyle, no single food or recipe can guarantee health or longevity. Instead, the lasting lesson is found in the habits and values that surrounded those meals every single day. The speaker encourages us to think independently before accepting every new trend, every advertisement, or every promise that claims happiness can be purchased. A meaningful life is rarely built through expensive products or constant comparison with other people. It grows through ordinary moments that are often overlooked. Sharing dinner with family, helping a neighbor, appreciating what is already on the table, and using time with intention can leave a greater impact than chasing the next symbol of success. Perhaps the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the ability to recognize when enough is truly enough. Contentment does not mean giving up on growth or ambition. It means refusing to let outside voices define our worth or determine what kind of life should make us happy. That freedom allows us to focus on what genuinely matters and to build a future based on our own values. If this story leaves you with one idea, let it be this: small choices repeated consistently shape the direction of our lives. Choose gratitude whenever possible. Protect your peace. Invest your time in people rather than possessions. Appreciate simple moments that money cannot replace. When we live with wisdom, kindness, and purpose, we discover that the richest life is not the one with the most things, but the one filled with meaningful relationships, quiet confidence, and lasting contentment.